Hello guys! Today we'll be solving the Spring Boot task that is present for our assessment. As a start, let's say that we'll be using for this the VS Code. This is a standard IDE. IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment and is here to make our life easier while we write good code. VS Code is quite popular actually. It's similar to most of the other IDEs that are highly used like IntelliJ IDEA, Spring Toolsuite, Eclipse, etc. etc. As you can see here on the right side, we have our project's structure. Actually, it's the right side of the screen, left side of the IDE. Okay. On the upper right corner, we will have at some point the Run button here, and basically that's it. As I said, standard IDE, nothing else. Okay, now let's understand what is expected of us. We have the following task. The government is building a centralized student management system that involves a microservice for maintaining unique student ID that is mapped for the respective student's name. This microservice is built using the Spring Boot framework and connects to a Java SQL database using the JDBC API. As you can see here, we want to implement the following APIs. We have a get that fetches all the student. We have post to add a new student. We also have a get by ID, which is going to get the details for a student by specified ID. Then we have put to update the details for a student. And then we have a delete to delete a student. To make things simpler, a lot of boiler code is already written, so all we need to do is simply implement here the student controller class and student row mapper class. Now let's start by opening the student controller class and see what we have there. Let me just open this a bit more. Okay, now as a start we have some instance of named parameter JDBC template. What is that? Now, this class is a convenient class that is allowing us to execute queries or SQL statements directly against the underlying database. I say convenience because behind the curtain, JDBC template will manage the opening and closing of the connection against our database. It will resolve our statements, parameters, and many other things we don't have to worry about when using this class. Now, so upon the startup, the Spring framework will insert a bean of this type into this field. So again, we have nothing to worry about. Now, let's get this controller and examine every request that there is. For example, we'll start with the get all students request. Now, it should return here, as you can see, a list of students that should be found in the database. But how will the program know to create a student from the data we fetch from the database? Now, let's open the student class that is here. Let me just expand that a little. We have here the student class. It's a simple entity class having defined the name of the table, which is student. It only has ID and name. That's it. But still, we need some mapping between the database and our entity. We are going to perform this mapping in the student row mapper class. Here. Let me just again shrink this a little. Now, the student row mapper class implements the row mapper interface. Row mapper is an interface that allows us to map a row of the relations with the instance of user-defined class. It iterates through the result set internally and adds it into the collection, meaning that for each record found in the specific result set, the map row will be called. So we need to basically return an instance of the object we want. That said, we will simply create a new student here and then set its ID and name fields from what is found in the database for every row that is found, right? It's simple. let's do that. Now we will just do the following: student equals student. So far so good. So we'll then say student set ID, and now what? Now we'll set rs for the result set, get long, and we'll type ID. Okay, but since this will return also the name, so the name should also be gotten. Now here we will say student set name, and here we will set rs for the result set, get string, and we'll type name. Okay, now all we need to do is here to return the student, and basically this is our implementation of the student role mapper class. That's it. We can safely close it. Okay, now back to our student controller class. The getAllStudent methods, as I said, should return a list of students. So all we need to do here is write a very simple select statement that will get all the students from the database. So we'll write JDBC template and we'll use query. Now, query is a method that allows us to execute a select statement. Now, let's write the statement. It will be select star from student. And okay, we should be all set. Wait, what? We have an error. Now, this is because, as I said, the query means nothing to the JDBC template unless there's a mapper to map the result set, which is going to be gotten from the query, to a set of Java objects. That's why we implemented the student role mapper class. So basically what we need to do is simply provide new student role mapper, and that's it. We are done. Now, since we want to return this, we'll say a list of students will be equal to this. And yep, all that's left for us is simply to pass this list to the body of the response entity. I will not get into details about response entity yet, because I believe it's not very important for our implementation. Now, this should be working, but in my opinion, in programming, should is never good. So we need to run our program and test it out. For a start, let's go here to the API application Java class and press the button here. Upon startup, we will see that this application is running on port 8083, I believe. Let's search for it. Yep, 8083. So, since we don't have much of an option, we'll use the curl command, which is from Linux, to test our API that we've just written. Now, what we need to do, if you're not familiar with Linux, is just follow me. Simply type curl and then http, now 2 slashes, localhost, and then the port, which is 8083/API/v1/students. And that's it. Let's see. It's not very clear, but we've gotten an empty array. Now, this is because we have no students yet. So what we need to do, we need to implement here the post request that will add a student, right? Okay, let's go here and we will find the create student method. Now, it takes a response body of type student, and it's going to be serialized into the student object. I will explain a bit for that later, but now let's concentrate on what we need to implement. Basically, what we need to do is tell the JDBC template to execute the update method, which is a method that allows insert, update, or delete statements to be executed against our database. So we'll say JDBC template update. And here we will need to do what? We will need to do insert into student, and then here we will have ID and name, right? And then we need some values. Then what we need to do is use the correct syntax, which is this ID and now this and name. Whoop. Okay. Now everything looks good, but we want to add values to this query, and for now we have nothing passed to the query. To achieve that, we must use one special class, which is new map SQL parameter source. Okay, since it's not very clear, let's transfer it to a new role. Now this class provides us with an object that allows us to pass values to the query's parameter. We can simply go and use add value and change them. So now we will use for ID the value 1 and by 1 we will use student get ID, and then one more time we will say add value. Let me change them right here, and for the second parameter we will pass name and then student get name. Okay, now everything looks good. Now let's just see that we have an error. Here we should type values and we should remove these double quotes. Okay, everything looks good. So now here let's go and again kill this process. Let's just start the Java application one more time, and once it's started we can just go here, and I've already prepared that for you, so we'll just go here and use this post request I've already prepared. Let me explain what this is doing. Now this is simply creating a post request to the following URL, having the following body and using a content type of the body to be JSON. Let's execute it. Now we have no response, which means everything is good. So now let's execute the following CR URL for the all students, and for some reason it's not copying, so we'll again just go to up, and as you can see here we have one new student which is with ID 1 and name John Doe. Okay, so far so good. Now let's just add another student with ID 2. Why is that happening? Okay, this is getting weird. This terminal is not really good. Okay, let's just clear it like that. And 2, 3 up. And here we will make Jane Doe with ID 2. Again, all students, and we have few students already. That's pretty good. Let's just clear the terminal one more time. Now let's go again to the student controller. What we need to do now, since we already have students, let's implement the getStudent by ID. Basically what here we need to do is again use the JDBC template and use query for object. This allows us to execute a query and get an object that is going to be mapped to a Java object. Now what will be the query? Well, it's very simple. The query will be select star from student where ID is equal to 2.id. And again, since we want some arguments to be passed, we can just again use the map SQL parameter source, but this time only for the ID. We'll copy and paste that. Since here the ID is not coming from an object, we'll just replace that with the ID that is coming from the path variable. And that's it. Okay, yep, again, here we have a problem. Why? Because we haven't tell how to map the student that is gotten from the database to the student object. So what we need to do here is just find the student row mapper, just copy that, paste it here, and we should be all set. Now, since we want to return, let's just format this a bit. Since we want to return the return of this statement to the body, we'll save this to a variable. We'll say student. Student will be equal to this. And then basically we'll just get that and place it here. And that's it. But wait, actually that's not it. Why? Because if there's no student with such ID, what should we do? Well, we should return that there's no such student, right? So before we return that, we will just check if this student is present. If it is equal to null, we will just return a response entity of type no content and build. Now we will have an error here if there's no students. So we'll just surround this with a try catch. And this try catch will be catching everything. And it will catch empty result data exception E, and if so, it will return actually this one. Okay, so now everything should look good. Okay, now let's come here and kill this Java process one more time. Now let's run this application one more time. It started. Now let's come here and make a post to add one John Doe, because why? We are using H2 database, and every time upon restart the H2 database is getting cleared. So here there's no entities yet. We created one student, and now let's make this CURL to the same API as the get all users, but we are just passing the following ID, and as you can see everything is working. We are getting John Doe. Now let's try with ID 3 and we are getting nada. So everything we implemented so far is working good. Let's kill the Java app one more time and proceed with what? We only have the update and delete. Now, what about the update? Now, with the update, we just need to go JDBC template update, and what we need to do here is just write the following query. Update student set name equal to dots name, where ID is equal to the past ID. And since again we are using some parameters here, what we need to do is just simply copy this statement for map SQL parameter source and paste it here. Let's just format that a little. Basically what's going to happen now is we are going to execute this update statement, and we are going to update the name of a specified user. Again, here for the body of the put request, we need to add a JSON. Since we have nothing else to return, and since we are going to just get an OK if everything is updated, there's nothing much more to do. Okay, this was simple. Let's implement also the delete statement again with the update method of the JDBC template. This statement is going to be delete from student where ID is equal to ID. And here we'll just copy this thing and place it here. We are programmers, we are lazy, no need to write anything twice. And I believe we are all set. What we need to do is simply run our application and test if everything we've written so far works correctly. Now, let's go to the API application class, let's run it. And once it's starting, okay, everything looks good. Go to the bash and let's just add 2 users. The first one will have ID 1 and the second one will have ID 2 and will be Jane Doe. Sorry, it's not really good looking, but you're getting the idea. Now, what we implemented, let's just check if the users are there actually. Okay, we have 2 users, 2 students, sorry, clearing. And now what? We need to implement, and we implemented, we need to check the put and delete. So what we need to do, we basically need to get this request and simply change the post method to put, and what we want to check if something is changed, right? So let's change to Jana Dowie. And now let's use this API to get the user with ID 2. As we see, we have Jana Dowie. Now for the delete, it's pretty simple. We'll just, let me clear that. And we just simply need to do curl x for delete, and we'll say http://local host, the port is 8383, and then API v1 students, and we wanted to delete student with ID 2. Okay, looks good. Let's check students with ID 2. There's no such student. Let's check all the students. We have 1 student named John Doe. And basically that's it. Now all we need to do is submit our application. Now here is very important step. You go here, then you select submit app, and then you click this green button. Okay, and once we get the confirmation message here, we should all be done. It might take a minute or so. Okay, now this looks good. Remember, this is very important. You must do that, otherwise you won't get any points for this task. Then you go here, click submit test, and you're all done.